About a year ago I bought the 2 horsepower Harbor Freight dust collector, and since then I've also made the Dust Separator, but I kind of want to change up the design on this to where the exhaust goes out the window. Now in my garage the window only has one glass panel in it. The part that slides up and down is gone, it always has been, and also the piece of USB that I put up to cover that is not very secure. So the first thing I'm gonna have to do is get that all secured in to be able to hold the weight of the dust collector. So what I'm going to do is cut some 2x4s down to where I can make a frame for the sheet of OSB. That way I can secure everything down to the window sill. Here I'm just going to trim down the piece of OSB that was already in the window to begin with, because when I put it up the first time it was a really tight fit. So with the framing and everything, I don't need this piece to be that tight. That way it's just easier to get the whole thing into the window. Here I'm just going to secure the piece of OSB to the framing and then size it into the window, make sure everything fits nicely. Now that I know that everything fits in place, I tore it back apart and I'll just be sanding all the pieces, and then I'll end up painting everything black and red like the rest of the shop. Now I'm going to use the fitting that came off the exhaust of the dust collector itself to mark out the hole that I need to cut, as well as the bolt holes that I need to drill out in order to secure the whole dust collection onto this board. Next I'm going to prepare the dust collector itself to be able to mount to this board. Now I need the exhaust in the same direction as the mounting bracket, so I've got to tear this apart to get to the 4 bolts that hold the front piece onto the motor. Then all I do is move it over a few bolt holes, or turn it around on the few bolt holes to where the exhaust will be in the same direction as the mounting bracket. That way I can mount this motor onto the board and the exhaust will also face the board to exhaust all the small particles out the window. Now I'm going to line up the holes of the exhaust to get an idea of the bolt holes for the mounting bracket for the motor. I had to bend the bracket a little bit. It was a little bit off to where it would touch onto the board, and I didn't show it in the video, but I took the motor off the mounting bracket just so I can get the board up, and then I'm going to secure this board to the windowsill with, I think I put 4 screws on the bottom, 4 screws on the top, and 2 on each side just to secure that whole board into the windowsill. I had to add a screw right here to pull out the board. It wasn't lined up with the windowsill. It kind of sucked in a little too much. That's all me doing there. Now I'm just going to mount the dust collector onto the motor bracket. Next I'll be hot gluing an elbow onto the fitting that came with the dust collector that fit on the exhaust, so that I can mount the exhaust fitting to the outside, and any fine dust will be pointed directly down instead of shooting straight out from the window. Now in order to hook up the dust collector to my separator, I needed to use a 4" to 3" reducer. And in order to get the hose to fit around the larger diameter, I had to sand it down. Then I coated it with paste wax and just fitted the hose onto the 4" side of the reducer. And then that way I can use the 3" part for my dust separator. And then I just hooked the hose up directly to the dust collector. Next I'll be using a remote control plug in order to automatically turn on and off the dust collector with a remote control. Then I just plug the dust collector in. Now the only thing that I have left to do right now is the 4" hose that goes from the separator to the tools. A little bit later I want to hook up my whole dust collection system to where I run piping throughout the shop for different tools, but right now I do not have the piping for that, so I'll just run this hose to mainly my table saw. If I need it for my jointer or planer, I'll just have to disconnect it from my table saw for now. I go ahead and I empty my trash can into the old system with the bag and everything, and I'm thinking about keeping that whole setup so I can just dump the trash can in there, but I don't know if I want to waste the space either, so I may put it outside where the exhaust is. So now I'm just making a few cuts and testing out the dust collection. It seems to be sucking in very well. Here you see the new system that I had set up for my dust collection. If you've enjoyed the video, if you have, please like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, stay safe.